everyone. Welcome to STEM Stacked, your go-to place to build real STEM skills, one concept at a time. In this quick tutorial, we'll be building a beginner-friendly Python program that converts temperatures between Celsius, Fahrenheit, and Kelvin. You'll get to choose both the input and output units, which makes it a super flexible and interactive program. As you can see on my screen here, I'm running the program and I'll take you through just how it works. So basically the program starts by greeting the user, that is by telling the user welcome to the temperature converter, after which it asks the user to choose an input temperature unit. You can either choose K for Kelvin, F for Fahrenheit, or C for Celsius. I'll choose Celsius in this case, so I'll just write as C, then I'll click enter. It then asks the user to enter the temperature value. I'll write 37 degrees, then I'll click enter. It then asks me, the user, to input the output temperature, or rather, the temperature unit I'd like to convert 37 degrees Celsius to, and I'd like to convert it to Fahrenheit, so I'll click F. When I click enter, it gives me the converted temperature as 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So let's see how we can create this interactive program using Python. So very first, before we go on to the programming, I'd like to take you through the formulas that we'll use. So we'll need 3 formulas that I've highlighted in the board here. The first formula we'll need is the one that converts Celsius to Fahrenheit. And that formula is basically the temperature in Celsius multiplied by 9 all over 5, then added to 32. The next formula is converting Fahrenheit to Celsius, which is the reverse of the first formula. First of all, we subtract 32 from the temperature, then we multiply it by the reciprocal of 9 over 5, which is 5 over 9. And finally, converting Celsius to Kelvin is just adding 273.15 to the Celsius temperature. And if you wanted to convert Kelvin back to Celsius, we would basically subtract 273.15. Okay, let's move on to VS Code to program this. Just as I mentioned, I'll be using VS Code for my programming, but you can use any IDE to program this. So long as it supports Python, you are good to go. So the first thing, I'll open a new file and let's call it temp_convert.py. So anytime you're opening a Python file, you want to end with the extension .py to tell the IDE that this is a Python file. I'll then click enter. So the first thing we can do, we can have a comment and call this temperature converter. After that, we first of all want to print a statement to the user to welcome the user to the program. So we can have a print followed by parentheses, and inside the parentheses we can have our opening and closing speech marks, and we can write welcome to the temperature converter, sort of an exclamation mark. After that, we can go on to have our first input. So at this point, we want to ask the user to input the temperature unit of the temperature they want to convert. So we can have an input, then inside parentheses we have choose the input, choose the input temperature, then we can have in brackets K for Kelvin, or F for Fahrenheit, or C. Then we can have something like a colon, then a space. So this white space sort of separates the question or the input statement from where the cursor will be when the user types the input temperature, sort of just having a clean interface. So we'll save this in a value called input underscore unit. So basically this is the input temperature unit. After that, we can then ask the user to input the temperature they'd like us to convert. So we can save that under temperature and we'll say temperature is equal to. Now, most of the times temperatures are usually decimal numbers. So we'll save this as a float. Then inside the float, we'll have an input. Then inside the input, we'll have enter the temperature value. Then we'll have a colon and a white space. So basically, at this point, we are asking the user to enter the value of the temperature they wish to convert, and we'll save this value as a float. So it will basically be a sort of a decimal integer. After that, we can have our output unit. So this is basically the unit the user would like to convert the temperature to. And we can have an input, and inside the input we'll have choose the output temperature unit. And we can have the same inside parentheses K/F/C. And then we can have a sort of colon and a white space. So something I wanted to show you is how we can make this program a bit more user-friendly. So what I'll just do is I'll run the program at this stage to show you how we can do this. So let me just run this, and here we have, welcome to the temperature converter. Choose the input temperature. So I'll have something like C for Celsius, capital C, and enter the temperature value. I'll have something like 100 Celsius and use the output temperature, and I'll have F, capital F for Fahrenheit. So this is okay, but let's say a user, instead of inputting the capital C, input a small c. We want to make it such that even if the user inputs a small c, the program still knows that this is the same as the capital C and points to Celsius. So how do we do that? Over here at the input unit, we come at the end of the statement and add what we call a Python method. So methods are like mini functions that can be used inside specific data types. For example, if you're using a function that is exclusive to a string or an integer type data or a list type of data, you use methods. So one method that's very useful for strings is the dot upper method. So the dot upper method basically converts whatever value the user will input to this string into a capital letter. So in case the user inputs a small f or a small c or a small k, it will still be converted to a capital F, capital C, and capital K. So we can do the same for the output unit, have a dot upper method. We'll now define our final variable, which is the converted temperature. Converted underscore temp. And at this stage, we'll set it to none because at the moment, we don't have a value for the converted temperature. Now let's program the logic of the program. So I'll start with Celsius as input. There are basically three possible inputs, the Celsius being the input, the Fahrenheit being the input, and the Kelvin being the input. And all these three inputs have three combinations each. So we'll look at all of them. So having the Celsius as input, we'll have our if statement. So if input underscore unit is equal to capital C, that is the Celsius. Now we'll have a nested if statement here. If the input unit is equal to the capital C, which stands for Celsius, the output unit can still have three values. That is capital C for Celsius, capital F for Fahrenheit, and capital K for Kelvin. So we'll look at all of those situations. So we'll have if output unit is equal to capital C as well. Now, if the input and the output units are the same, basically the converted temperature will be equal to the temperature provided by the user. Elif, the output unit, is equal to capital F for Fahrenheit. Now, our converted temperature will be equal to temperature times 9 all over 5 plus 32 from the formulas we had. And finally, elif, the output unit, is equal to capital K for Kelvin. At this point, we'll have the converted temperature being equal to temperature plus 273.15. So these are all the possible combinations for the Celsius being the input. So what we'll do, we'll basically just copy all of this and use it for the Fahrenheit and the Kelvin inputs. So we'll just edit the Fahrenheit and the Kelvin inputs here. Our second comment here will have Fahrenheit as input. So if the input is equal to capital F now for Fahrenheit, and if output is equal to C. Now at this point, because all of these are parts of one if and elif combination, we'll have the Fahrenheit as input being an elif because we had if for the Celsius as input, and we'll also have Celsius as input being an elif. So we have Fahrenheit input unit equals to F. So if output unit is equals to C, converted temperature at this point will be temperature minus 32 because we're converting Celsius back to Fahrenheit. And this will be in parentheses. Let's have this in parentheses. And multiply this by 5 all over 9. And elif, the output temperature, is equals to Fahrenheit, similar to the input temperature. Converted temperature will just be equal to the temperature because they are the same. And finally, the last elif, if the output unit is equal to Kelvin, then the converted temperature will be temperature minus 32. First of all, we're converting it to degrees Celsius, similar to what we did above, and multiplying that by 5 all over 9, then adding 273.15 to the answer to then convert that to kelvins. Now, finally, let's look at Kelvin as input. So we'll edit the final comment to have Kelvin as input. Now, elif input unit is equal to capital K for Kelvin. If output unit is equal to C, now converting Kelvin to degrees Celsius, we just take the temperature minus 273.15. And if the output unit is equal to Fahrenheit, we take the temperature minus 273.15, converting it first to degrees Celsius, then multiplying that by 9 all over 5 plus 32. So what we'll do, we'll take temperature here minus 273.15. Then we'll have that inside parentheses. Then we'll have multiplied by 9 all over 5 plus 32. And finally, if the output unit is equal to the Kelvin, then the converted temperature will just be equal to the temperature. So finally, we'll have our final condition. That is, if our converted temperature is not equal to none. So if converted temp is not none, meaning one of these took place, because in each stage we are assigning a value to converted temperature. So basically at this point, we'll print a formatted string on a new line. So we'll have our \n, then we'll have converted temperature, then we have our colon, and then inside the curly brackets, we'll have the converted underscore temp. That is our value. And that will be what is printed in the formatted string. And finally, we'll have an else. That is now if the converted temperature is still none, meaning if none of these have taken place, we can print an error message. So we'll have else print in a new line. So we'll have \n. We can have an error message like invalid input. Please run the program again with the correct inputs. Something like that. So basically that is the whole program. So what we'll do at this point, we'll run the program to see how it works. So we have welcome to the temperature converter. Choose the input temperature. I'll have my input temperature as a Kelvin, and I'll have my value as 350 kelvins, and have my output temperature as Celsius. So the converted temperature is equal to 76.85 Celsius. Let's run the program again. So let's say a user use small k at this point. So we can have a small k for Kelvin, and we can have a temperature at 300 kelvins, and we can have a small f for Fahrenheit. The program will still work. So basically that was what I was talking about when I mentioned the dot upper method here. And that's basically it. A quick program that shows how conditional logic, user input, and some real-world formulas can come together. Give it a try with different values. In case you're new to Python or programming in general, I'll be rolling out a beginner Python programming series here on YouTube. I'll also be rolling out other STEM tutorials, so be on the lookout for those. As always, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share the video, and comment below on other tutorials you'd like to see me do. Keep stacking those STEM skills. I'll see you soon.